change.
The Paris Treaty and the Green New Deal are all about reducing carbon dioxide. Is that going to make a significant difference on the major drivers that have pushed our climate back and forth through glacial periods and warming periods for 4.5 billion years?
First of all, there is no hard evidence that CO2 has anything to do with the changing temperature of the Earth's climate. Secondly, CO2 is the most important food for all life on Earth. All the carbon in all carbon-based life, which is ourselves and all other life, came from carbon dioxide in the air and the water. Carbon dioxide has been declining steadily for the last 150 million years to its lowest level in the history of life on Earth at the height of the last glaciation, 180 ppm. The reason for this is that life itself has sucked the carbon out of the system and put it into sediments as fossil fuels, but much more importantly, as carbonaceous rocks, a fancy term for limestone, calcium carbonate. That's where all the carbon went. And we, thankfully, are putting some of the CO2 back into the air that was sucked out by life over the millennia and are restoring a balance to the global carbon cycle.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
During those periods, as the oceans cooled going into glaciations, large amounts of CO2 were sucked out of the air in gassing or absorption of the CO2, because cold water holds more gas than warm water does. It's like when you take a glass of water out of the fridge and put it on your counter, little bubbles form in it as it warms up. That's the gas coming out. When the oceans warm, like they did coming into the modern age now, you had CO2 coming back out of the oceans. The oceans have 40 times as much CO2 in them as the atmosphere does, so a 1% change in oceanic CO2 makes a big change in atmospheric CO2. There is no doubt in the Vostok ice core records and other ice core records that it is the warming of the oceans and the cooling of the oceans that is causing the changes in CO2 in the atmosphere. Now, since we started using fossil fuels, we are the dominant influence of CO2 in the atmosphere, causing it to rise back to levels that are more conducive for the survival of life on Earth than they had become during the peaks of the last 4, 5, 6 glaciations, when they sunk to within 30 parts per million of the death of plants.
Dr. Muller, I need to pause right there.